Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in the last tutorial I set up this kind of pop-up menu here so I can say that I want to delete rows of tables, and in this tutorial we're just going to implement that functionality and delete the row from the table. Now the strategy that I'm going to use here is I'm going to actually delete the row from the data model, and then I'm going to tell the table that the row has been deleted to make it refresh itself. And I'm also going to, instead of the table panel deleting stuff from the model itself, I'm going to make the table panel raise an event, and the main frame is actually going to intercept that event, and it's going to tell the model to delete the row. So let's have a look at that. One thing that I want to change here actually is in the data model, if we look at the database that stores the data, when it does get people, it actually returns just the actual array list of people, and other objects that get that reference could potentially modify this list. And I want to actually prevent it from doing that by saying collections.unmodifiable list like this, and put that around there and add the import, and that will prevent other classes from modifying the list via the reference that they retrieve. So I'm going to enforce that, and as I say, I'm going to actually allow the table to remove rows by telling the main frame to remove them, which will tell the controller, which will tell the data. So I'm just enforcing like a really clear flow of data in my application, rather than having all the different components do what they want with the data. And another thing I'm going to change here is I'm actually going to be deleting person objects from this array list, but I'm going to delete person objects from anywhere in the array list. And although this could be a bit pedantic really, because it's such a small application with a small amount of data, I'm going to change this to a linked list, because linked lists, unlike array lists, are optimized for adding and removing items in the middle of the list, whereas an array list is only optimized for adding and removing items at the end of the list. In fact, let's just change this to use the list interface. That's maybe more elegant, because we only need to actually have linked list mentioned when we actually create the object that actually implements the list interface. Okay, now so the first thing is that I've gonna, in my table panel here, well, let's actually take a look. Let's look at it from kind of the top end, as it were, because the main frame here creates the table panel, and I want to be able to say in main frame something like this: table panel dot add, let's call it, I don't know, add person table listener, a new person table listener, and I want that to have some method such as public void row deleted, maybe, which will accept a row like that, and that will then tell the controller to do something. But for the moment it can just have sysout row. So I've not implemented any of this stuff here, none of that actually exists or works, and I'm going to implement that now. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this person table listener interface. So, and you'll see this is exactly like adding a action listener to a button, really. In fact, I'm going to make this set person table listener, because a button actually maintains like a list of listeners on it, but here I'm going to only allow the table panel to have one listener at a time, just because it's easier to implement. So this set person table listener method doesn't of course exist in table panel, but we're going to implement it, and we'll start with this interface. So I'm going to right click on the GUI here and go to new interface, and we'll call it person table listener, and click finish. And I want the interface to specify this method here, public void row deleted. So let's add that to the interface like that. And now I need to implement this set person table listener method in the table panel. So let's go to the table panel and let's maximize that, and let's go down here and say I'll paste that in, and that's going to be public void set person table listener, and that accepts a person table listener, which I'll call listener. And what it's going to do with it is it's going to have to say something like this dot this dot person table listener equals listener. And now I need to create this reference, this private reference to the listener. So this just stores a reference to the listener basically up here, where I'm going to have private person table listener. This is the interface that I've just created here, and it's going to be a variable of that type. And now what's going to happen is that if someone right clicks on the table and selects remove item, it's now going to tell any listening class about it. So I'll say if person table listener is not equal to null, in other words, if it's been set to something, which I just did in my main frame, then I am going to say person table listener, and that's only got one method. If you look at person table listener, it's just got this row deleted, and pass in the row there that I got in the last tutorial. So this is the third time we've been through this kind of listener idea, I think, or at least the second time. And if I save my main frame now, the error will go away, and it's just going to print out the row for the moment. So if I run that, and then let's import some data, and if I select remove on one of these rows, you can see that it's going to get printed out down here. And the thing that's doing the printing is this in the main frame. So the main frame is now being informed when we select remove row, and the main frame knows what row we want to remove. Now to actually remove the row, I want to say something like controller.remove person and pass in the index of the row, which is the index of the person in the array list. So let's go to controller and implement that. So in controller, I've already got an add person, and I'm going to add a public void remove person int index, let's call it, and that's going to say to the DB, the database, something like db.remove person at index. And if I go to the database class now, so in the model database.java, in here I can say public void remove person int index, and all that has to do is say people, that's the array list up here, dot remove, and pass in the index there. So I just remove it from the array list. Now if I actually run this now, import some data and try to remove stuff, it doesn't actually work. And the reason for that is I need to tell the table view that the table model has changed. And the way I'm going to do that is I could actually call table panel dot refresh here, and that might not be an altogether bad idea, but I can possibly do it more efficiently because the table panel itself knows when someone's selected to remove a row. So right here, where I have the action lister on the menu, I could say table.fire, and rather than fire a actually not table but table model dot fire, and rather than fire a method that just says that the data has changed as a whole, to be more efficient I could fire table rows deleted and pass in the actual rows that hopefully will be deleted after doing the deletion here. So if I run that, and fingers crossed, that might actually work. Delete row, and I'm deleting rows from my table like that. Although of course I'm not saving anything at the moment, so I can get my rows back like that by doing an import. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and so we've seen now how to import data into tables and implement table models and add and remove rows from tables. And in the next tutorial we're going to look at the JDialog class. So join me again then, and until next time, happy coding.